Hello, everyone. My name is Tianyi. I am a climate scientist at the Environmental Defense Fund. EDF is the global, nonprofit, non-governmental organization that tackles the most pressing environmental issues of our times, and that is climate change, air quality, energy transition, and so much more. As a climate scientist at EDF, my research focuses on short-lived climate pollutants and their climate impact. Both methane and hydrogen are short-lived climate pollutants. I investigate their impacts on the climate system in terms of global mean temperatures, ocean warming, sea level rise, and Arctic sea ice melt. Today, I want to share with you our research on hydrogen that really illuminated one characteristic of hydrogen that needs to be well managed to achieve its maximum climate benefit. This work is led by our senior climate scientist, Dr. Elisa Alko, and our chief scientist, Dr. Steve Hamburg. Hydrogen has received so much attention. Many countries have developed roadmaps, and it has received enormous investment. And that is because we have an urgent need to decarbonize our economy, and hydrogen can be used as a fuel in our energy system. This kind of attention is for good reason. There are many advantages of using hydrogen as energy. It is a very abundant molecule, and there are many production sources we could use. And hydrogen can be used for a variety of applications that most of them already exist today. But there are also many barriers. It is a molecule that does not naturally stay as hydrogen in the natural world. So this molecule needs to be extracted from water or methane or other molecules. It could be very energy intensive and economically expensive to extract hydrogen. And it can leak because hydrogen is an indirect greenhouse gas that can hurt its intended climate benefit. And that is what I want to focus on today. I will start with some key messages that we will touch on throughout this presentation. Hydrogen is not inherently climate neutral, and that is regardless of production methods. Itself is an indirect greenhouse gas and is a very small leaky molecule. A hydrogen molecule is a hydrogen molecule. Despite the fact that they may be created from clean energy, the resultant hydrogen molecule, it is still an indirect greenhouse gas. There is emerging consensus among scientists that hydrogen can cause non-negligible warming, but the warming impact is fairly short-lived. Hydrogen only lives in the atmosphere for about 2 years. That means it can have a strong near-term warming potential, but over time, it will decline. How serious this warming is depends on how much hydrogen is emitted. And that depends on how much is deployed and also how well our infrastructures can contain hydrogen. Our research suggests that if emission rates are high, that can severely undermine climate benefits of hydrogen. However, we have virtually no data on total hydrogen leakage. There's no empirical evidence of how much hydrogen is escaping to the atmosphere today. And to better quantify that may require new technologies. But we need to start considering this risk in decision and planning. We need to prioritize applications with no better alternatives and systems that are well managed, well contained, that minimize leakage. Also electrify first, because hydrogen is very energy intensive to produce. Wherever available, electrification generally is a more efficient decarbonization tool. In terms of hydrogen as an indirect greenhouse gas, it works like this. When it's emitted into the atmosphere, it does not trap heat itself, but it does trigger a chain of chemical reactions that increase other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The main reaction is with hydroxyl radical. Hydroxyl radical is also a main sink for other greenhouse gas and pollutants in the atmosphere. And one of the main ones is methane. More hydrogen in the atmosphere means there's less hydroxyl radical for methane to react with. And that extends methane's lifetime in the atmosphere. This chemical reaction also will generate tropospheric ozone and stratospheric water vapor. All of these three are greenhouse gases that trap additional heat in the climate. About half of hydrogen's indirect warming is coming from methane, and the other half coming from ozone and more water vapor. Because this warming potential of hydrogen, we're concerned since hydrogen, it is a very, very small molecule and slippery, it can emit from every step of the value chain. We don't really know exactly how much we're emitting today, but the most available evidence shows that it could be as low as 1% and as high as 10%. I want to note that this is a very uncertain number, and it's mostly from theoretical studies and some modeling exercises rather than based on empirical evidence. If hydrogen is produced through the blue method, that is with natural gas and carbon capture, there's also some residual carbon dioxide emissions because carbon capture is not 100% perfect, and some methane emissions that occur with the natural gas feedstock. These will trap more heat in addition to hydrogen's indirect warming effect. So how serious is this problem really is? We wanted to illustrate that by looking at a very generic case. Imagine a case where we deploy 1 kilogram of hydrogen, whether that's green hydrogen or blue hydrogen, every year. And that should help us avoid 11 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions every year. Well, this number is averaged across sectors. Each sector will have a slightly different number, but it gives us a general sense of how much climate benefit 1 kilogram of hydrogen could generate. In terms of 1 kilogram of green hydrogen, we consider a plausible range of 1 to 10% of hydrogen emissions. For blue hydrogen, we add on a 1 to 3% methane emission rate associated with the natural gas feedstock. Then we evaluate what is the relative climate impact between the hydrogen technology and the fossil fuel that we're using today. And here's our result. On the x-axis, we have time. We start deploying this 1 kilogram of hydrogen every year at an arbitrary year, and we evaluate its climate benefit over 10 years all the way to over 100 years. On the y-axis is relative climate impact between the hydrogen technology compared to the fossil fuel. A gray bar in the middle says same climate impact is where the fossil fuel technology and hydrogen breaks even in terms of their climate impact. Everything above this gray bar means hydrogen is causing more warming in the climate than the fossil fuel we're currently using. Everything below this gray bar means hydrogen is generating a climate benefit. The blue and green boxes denotes blue hydrogen and green hydrogen. The top of the bars shows the worst case scenario of emission rates. That's 10% hydrogen emissions plus 3% methane emissions if it's for blue hydrogen. All of the bottom of the bars denotes the best case scenario where only 1% of each gas is emitted throughout the value chain. And there are a few important factors that influence the relative climate impact between these two technologies. The first one is emission rate. For blue hydrogen, both emission rate of hydrogen and methane matters. When both emission rates are high, which is the top of these bars, blue hydrogen can actually be worse for the climate for the first 20 years or so after it's deployed. However, if emission rate is low, that's 1% for hydrogen and methane, blue hydrogen can generate a pretty big climate benefit, around 65 to 70% over the first 10 years. For blue hydrogen, there is less of a difference, but there's still a significant difference in terms of whether it's generating 60% of climate benefits or it's generating 90 or even 95% of climate benefit. The second one is production method. Blue hydrogen and green hydrogen has quite a difference between them. And that's mainly due to the methane leakage that's considered in the blue hydrogen case. For blue hydrogen, there is a risk to be worse for the climate. However, for green hydrogen, over all timescales, it should generate a climate benefit. I want to note here that we also need to be careful that the renewable electricity that we use to generate green hydrogen should not delay fossil fuel retirement. If it does, then on the system level, this green hydrogen wouldn't be climate beneficial. The third factor is time. You can see over time that climate benefit increases, the impact from hydrogen technology decreases. And that is because both hydrogen and methane are short-lived. That means every year, the avoided CO2 emissions and the avoided warming from these CO2 emissions keep accumulating. But the warming from hydrogen and methane would level off after a little bit of time. So the relative climate impact between that warming and the avoided warming from CO2 would decline over time. However, I would note that we do have a near-term problem to solve. Climate impacts are already here. So it is as important to limit our near-term warming as to limit our long-term warming. With that, I will leave with a few recommendations. Hydrogen can play a meaningful role in hard-to-electrify sectors, but we need to get it right. We should advance both the science and technologies to quantify hydrogen emissions and really get a better understanding rather than the very uncertain 1 to 10% range of emission rate. We need to identify leakage mitigation measures and best practices across the value chain and deploy and build our infrastructures responsibly. We should also use hydrogen efficiently and for the right use cases. That's when there's no better alternative exist. If electrification is an option, we should always electrify first, just because hydrogen is very energy intensive to produce. And whenever we're using hydrogen for these hard to electrify sectors, we should minimize moving this molecule around because it is hard to contain. With that, thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of the conference.